The clock on my nightstand read 2:17 a.m. when I heard it. At first, I thought it was just the old pipes in our Chicago apartment building making noise again. Tommy had finally dozed off after an hour of fussing, and I was just settling back into bed when that metallic click echoed through the hallway. My heart stopped. I knew that sound. I'd heard it 1,000 times before. The sound of our front door lock turning. I grabbed Tommy from his bassinet, pulling him close to my chest. His tiny body was warm and peaceful, completely unaware that something was wrong. My bare feet touched the cold hardwood as I crept toward the bedroom door, trying to steady my breathing. Mike was in Milwaukee visiting his brother Jake for the weekend. Nobody else had a key to our place. The footsteps were deliberate, not hurried. Someone was moving through our living room like they belonged there. I pressed my ear against the door, Tommy's soft breathing the only sound I could focus on. Then I heard her voice. "I know you're awake, Sarah." My blood turned to ice. It was Helen, Mike's mother. I opened the door just a crack and saw her standing in our hallway, a large suitcase beside her, and that familiar cold smile on her face. She was wearing her navy blue coat, the one she always wore when she meant business. "What are you doing here?" I whispered, not wanting to wake Tommy completely. She looked at me like I was asking a stupid question. "I'm here for my grandson. I leave for Italy tomorrow morning and Tommy's coming with me." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stepped back, clutching Tommy tighter. "You're insane. You can't just..." "I can, and I will." Her voice was calm, matter of fact. "You're exhausted, Sarah. You're not thinking clearly. This trip will be good for him. He needs to meet his Italian family." I stared at her, trying to process what was happening. Helen had always been difficult, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. She was standing in my home at 2 a.m, talking about taking my 6-week-old baby to another country, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking. "Get out of my house right now." She tilted her head, studying me like I was a child having a tantrum. "You're being dramatic. I have everything planned. His passport, his formula, everything he needs. You can rest while we're gone." "His passport?" The words came out strangled. "You got him a passport?" "I'm his grandmother, Sarah. I have rights too." "Rights." The word made my stomach turn. I watched as she bent down to pick up what I now realized was a diaper bag, one I'd never seen before. She'd come prepared. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. She'd planned this, down to the last detail. Tommy stirred in my arms, making a small sound. Helen's eyes immediately fixed on him, and I saw something in her expression that terrified me. It was the same look she'd had when she held him for the first time at the hospital. Possessive, hungry almost. "Give him to me, Sarah." "No, don't make this harder than it needs to be." She took a step toward me, her hand outstretched. "I've already arranged everything. The flight leaves at 10. I backed away, my shoulders hitting the wall. Tommy was fully awake now, his dark eyes looking up at me. He was so small, so helpless. The thought of him being thousands of miles away from me, in a place I'd never been, with a woman who clearly thought she had more claim to him than I did, made me feel sick. "You're not taking him anywhere," I said, finding my voice. "This is kidnapping, Helen. You broke into my home." She laughed, actually laughed. "I used my key. Mike gave it to me months ago, remember? For emergencies. But this wasn't an emergency. This was something else entirely. This was a woman who had never accepted that her son had his own family now, who had spent the last 6 weeks undermining every decision I made about my own child. And now she was trying to take him away from me. I knew I had to act fast. Whatever was happening here, it wasn't going to end with Helen simply leaving empty-handed. Helen had never liked me. Not from the moment Mike brought me home to meet his family 3 years ago. I was too young, too independent, too different from the quiet, submissive girl she'd probably imagined for her only son. When we got engaged, she told Mike I was just trying to trap him. When we moved in together, she said I was taking advantage of his good nature. And when I got pregnant, she acted like I'd somehow stolen something that belonged to her. The problem started even before Tommy was born. Helen would show up at our apartment unannounced, usually when Mike was at work, with bags full of baby clothes she'd bought without asking what we needed. She'd rearrange things in the nursery, claiming she was just being helpful. When I told Mike about it, he'd just shrug and say, "That's just how she is, Sarah. She means well." But I knew better. Helen didn't mean well. She meant to take over. After Tommy was born, it got worse. She'd arrive at the hospital before visiting hours even started, pushing past the nurses to get to my room. She'd take Tommy from my arms without asking, holding him like he was hers, cooing at him in Italian while shooting disapproving looks at me. When the lactation consultant came to help me with breastfeeding, Helen made comments about how formula was just as good, maybe even better. "I raised 5 children on formula," she'd say loudly, making sure everyone in the room could hear. "They all turned out just fine." Mike would just stand there, caught between us, looking uncomfortable but never saying anything to defend me. It was like he was 12 years old again, afraid to contradict his mother. The worst part was how she'd undermine me in front of other people. At Tommy's baptism, when my sister Amy complimented how well I was handling new motherhood, Helen jumped in with, "Oh, she's still learning. There's so much she doesn't know yet. Thank goodness she has me to help her." She'd correct me when I was feeding him, telling me I was holding the bottle wrong. She'd rewrap him when I changed his diaper, claiming I wasn't doing it tight enough. She'd even critique the way I dressed him, bringing new outfits every time she visited and changing him into them right in front of me. "This is much more practical," she'd say, as if the outfit I'd chosen was somehow dangerous. The breaking point should have been 2 weeks ago, when I found her in our apartment when I came back from the grocery store. She was in the nursery, packing clothes into a bag. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was taking some of Tommy's things to her house so she'd be prepared when he stayed overnight. "He's 6 weeks old, Helen. He's not staying overnight anywhere." She looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "All babies need to bond with their grandmothers. It's important for his development." That night I told Mike we needed to set boundaries. Real ones. I was tired of feeling like a guest in my own home. Tired of being treated like I didn't know how to take care of my own child. Mike listened, nodded, promised he'd talk to her. But he never did. Or if he did, it didn't make any difference. Helen kept showing up. She kept commenting. She kept acting like Tommy was her child and I was just the babysitter. Last week she started talking about Italy. Her brother was getting married in Rome, and she wanted to take Tommy to meet the family. When I said absolutely not, she argued that it would be good for him to learn about his heritage. When Mike supported me for once, saying Tommy was too young to travel, she got angry. "You're both being selfish," she said. "This is his family too. He has a right to know where he comes from." But standing here now, in my hallway at 2 a.m, I realized she hadn't been asking for permission. She'd been informing us of her plans. The passport she mentioned, the diaper bag, the suitcase. She'd already made all the arrangements. She'd probably booked the ticket weeks ago. Mike had always said his mother was controlling, but he'd made it sound like it was just her personality, something we had to tolerate. He'd never made it sound like this, like she genuinely believed she had more rights to our child than we did. Tommy made a small noise, and I looked down at his perfect little face. He was mine, not hers. Mine. I'd carried him for 9 months, given birth to him, fed him, changed him, stayed up with him every night since he was born. Helen might be his grandmother, but that didn't give her the right to make decisions about his life, especially not decisions like this. Helen took another step toward me, her hand still outstretched. In the dim light from the hallway, her face looked different than usual. There was something desperate in her eyes, something that made my skin crawl. This wasn't just about wanting to spend time with her grandson. This was about control, about winning some twisted game I didn't even know we were playing. "Sarah, be reasonable," she said, her voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd come to hate. "You haven't slept properly in weeks. You're emotional. You're not thinking clearly. A few days in Italy will be good for both of you." I said no. My voice was stronger now, fueled by a rage I didn't know I was capable of feeling. "You need to leave, now." She ignored me completely, moving closer. "Tommy needs to meet his great-uncle Marco. He's getting old, Sarah. This might be his only chance. He's 6 weeks old, Helen. He won't remember meeting anyone. That's not the point." Her voice was getting sharper now, the false sweetness dropping away. "This is about family, about duty, about doing what's right for this child instead of being selfish. Selfish. The word hit me like a slap. I was being selfish for wanting to keep my newborn baby with me, for not wanting him taken to another country by a woman who'd just broken into my home. Tommy started to fuss, picking up on my tension. I bounced him gently, trying to keep him calm while my mind raced. Helen's suitcase was blocking the path to the front door. Even if I could get past her, she was between me and my phone, which was charging on the kitchen counter. "Look what you're doing to him," Helen said, nodding toward Tommy. "You're upsetting him. Give him to me. I can calm him down." The audacity of it made me want to scream. She breaks into my home, tries to kidnap my baby, and then blames me for upsetting him. "Get away from us," I said, backing toward the bedroom. But Helen was done pretending to be reasonable. Her face hardened, and she lunged forward, her hands reaching for Tommy. "Enough of this nonsense. You're being ridiculous." I twisted away from her, protecting Tommy with my body. "Don't touch him." She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. "He's my grandson too, Sarah. I have rights." That word again. Rights. Like my baby was some kind of shared property instead of a human being who belonged with his mother. I yanked my arm free and stumbled backward into the bedroom, slamming the door behind me and turning the lock with shaking hands. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Tommy was crying now, probably scared by all the commotion. Helen started banging on the door immediately. "Open this door, Sarah. You're being irrational." I ignored her, moving quickly to the bassinet and gently placing Tommy inside. He was safe here for now. But Helen wasn't going to give up. I could hear her rattling the door handle, her voice getting louder and more demanding. "This is ridiculous. I'm his grandmother. You can't keep me away from him." I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, my hands shaking as I dialed 911. The operator answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency?" "Someone broke into my apartment," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "She's trying to take my baby." "Ma'am, are you and your child safe right now?" "We're locked in the bedroom. She's still here. She has a suitcase and everything. She says she's taking him to Italy." I could hear Helen outside the door, her tone shifting between angry demands and false sweetness, like she was practicing different approaches. "Sarah, honey, please be reasonable. Think about what's best for Tommy." "Ma'am, I'm sending officers to your location now. Can you tell me who this person is?" "It's my mother-in-law. She used a key to get in. She planned this whole thing." "Are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" "No, we're okay. But she tried to grab my baby. I don't know what she'll do next." The banging on the door got louder. "I know you called someone, Sarah. You're making a mistake. When Mike finds out about this, he'll be furious." But I wasn't worried about Mike being furious anymore. Let him be angry. Let him choose between his wife and child and his crazy mother. I was done trying to keep the peace, done pretending Helen's behavior was normal or acceptable. "The officers should be there in about 5 minutes, the operator said. "Stay on the line with me until they arrive." "Sarah," Helen's voice was getting more desperate now. "Think about what you're doing. This is family business. You can't involve strangers." But that's exactly what she was to me now. A stranger. A stranger who'd broken into my home and tried to steal my child. Whatever family connection we'd had, she'd severed it the moment she'd made this insane plan. Tommy had quieted down, exhausted from crying. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching his little chest rise and fall, and felt something shift inside me. For weeks, I'd been second-guessing myself, wondering if maybe Helen was right. Maybe I didn't know what I was doing. Maybe I needed her help more than I wanted to admit. But sitting there in the dark, listening to her bang on my door and demand access to my child, I realized something important. I wasn't the one who was wrong here. I wasn't the one who was being unreasonable. I was Tommy's mother. And no one, not Helen, not even Mike if he chose to side with her, was going to change that. The doorbell rang exactly when the operator said it would. I heard Helen's voice change instantly, the angry demand stopping mid-sentence. There was a moment of complete silence. Then I heard her footsteps moving away from my door. "Ma'am, are those the officers?" the dispatcher asked. "Yes, I think so. I'm going to stay on the line until they contact you directly." I heard the front door open, and Helen's voice floated down the hallway. She sounded completely different now. Sweet, confused, almost fragile. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm Helen Rossi, and this is my son's apartment. My daughter-in-law is having some kind of breakdown. She's locked herself in the bedroom with my grandson, and I'm worried about the baby's safety." My jaw dropped. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. She was trying to flip the whole situation, make herself the concerned grandmother and me the unstable one. "Chicago police, ma'am. We received a call about a break-in and attempted kidnapping." Helen's laugh was light, almost musical. "Oh my goodness. Is that what she told you?" "Poor Sarah. She's been so stressed since the baby was born. I came over to help. I have a key, you see, for emergencies. And she just completely overreacted. New mothers sometimes get these paranoid thoughts. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was good at this. Really good. If I hadn't been on the phone with 911 the whole time, if I hadn't witnessed her behavior myself, I might have almost believed her version of events. "Ma'am, can you open the bedroom door, please?" One of the officers called out. "We need to speak with you." I unlocked the door with trembling hands, still holding the phone. 2 officers stood in my hallway. A tall woman with kind eyes and a younger man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Helen was behind them, and I could see she'd already moved her suitcase and the diaper bag to a less obvious spot. "I'm Officer Martinez," the woman said. "Are you Sarah Rossi?" "Yes." My voice came out as a whisper. "Can you tell us what happened here tonight?" I looked past them at Helen, who was watching me with this strange, expectant expression, like she was curious to see how I'd handle this, whether I'd back down now that she'd gotten her story in first. "She broke in," I said, my voice getting stronger. "She used a key without permission and told me she was taking my baby to Italy. She tried to grab him from me." Helen made a soft, sad sound. "See what I mean? She's not thinking clearly. Sarah, honey, I didn't break in. I used the key Mike gave me, and I never said I was taking Tommy anywhere. I suggested a visit to Italy might be nice someday, and she just snapped." "You had a suitcase," I said, "and a diaper bag packed. You said your flight was at 10 in the morning. I'm going to Italy, yes, for my nephew's wedding. But I never said anything about taking the baby." She turned to the officers with this wounded expression. "I think she's been having some postpartum issues. Mike, that's my son, her husband. He's been worried about her." The younger officer was writing everything down, and I could see doubt creeping into his expression. Helen was so convincing, so reasonable. And here I was, in my pajamas, probably looking exactly like what she was describing. A stressed-out new mother who wasn't thinking clearly. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez said to me, "do you have any proof of what you're alleging?" Proof. I looked around the room desperately. The suitcase was still there, and the diaper bag. "Look at what she brought," I said. "Why would she need a diaper bag if she wasn't planning to take him?" Helen shrugged sadly. "I always bring baby supplies when I visit. Sarah knows that. I like to be prepared in case she needs help." But then I remembered something. "Ask her about the passport," I said. She said she already got him a passport. For the first time, Helen hesitated. It was just for a second, but Officer Martinez caught it. "Ma'am, did you obtain a passport for this child?" I looked into it," Helen said carefully. "I thought it might be nice for him to have one for the future, but I never actually—" "You need both parents' signatures for a minor's passport," Officer Martinez said. "Did you have the father's permission?" Helen's composure cracked slightly. "Mike and I discussed it. He thought it was a good idea. But you didn't have his signature," the officer pressed. "Well, no, but— And you came here at 2 in the morning with a suitcase and baby supplies, telling Ms. Rossi you were taking her child to Italy?" Helen straightened up, her mask slipping completely now. "That child is my grandson. I have rights too. Sarah is clearly not capable of making good decisions right now. Someone needs to look out for Tommy's interests." There it was. The truth she'd been trying to hide behind all her reasonable explanations. She really did believe she had the right to take my child. Officer Martinez looked at me with different eyes now. "Ma'am, do you want to press charges?" I looked at Helen, who was staring at me with pure hatred now that her act had fallen apart. 6 weeks ago, I might have hesitated, worried about family drama, concerned about what Mike would think. But that was before she'd broken into my home, before she'd tried to take my baby, before she'd stood in my hallway and acted like I was the crazy one for trying to protect my child. "Yes," I said. "I want to press charges." They didn't arrest Helen that night, but they did escort her out of the apartment. She left quietly, but not before turning back to look at me one last time. The expression on her face wasn't anger anymore. It was something colder, more calculating, like she was already planning her next move. "We'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow to file a formal report," Officer Martinez told me as they were leaving. "And I'd recommend changing your locks as soon as possible." "I will," I said, meaning it. "Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight? Someone who can come be with you?" I thought about calling my sister Amy, but it was almost 3 a.m, and she lived an hour away in Schaumburg. "I'll be okay. I'll call my husband." After they left, I sat in the living room holding Tommy, staring at the spot where Helen's suitcase had been. The apartment felt different now, violated somehow. I kept looking at the front door, half expecting her to come back. I called Mike at 3:30 a.m. He answered on the first ring, probably thinking something had happened to the baby. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "Your mother broke into our apartment tonight. She tried to take Tommy." There was a long silence. "What are you talking about?" I told him everything. The key, the suitcase, the passport, the flight to Italy. As I talked, I could hear him getting more and more agitated. "That can't be right," he said finally. "Mom wouldn't do something like that. Are you sure you didn't misunderstand what she was saying?" Even after everything that had just happened, he was still defending her. "Mike, the police were here. They escorted her out. I'm filing charges tomorrow." "Charges? Sarah, she's my mother. She's Tommy's grandmother. Maybe she got a little carried away, but a little carried away?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "She broke into our home and tried to kidnap our child. How is that a little carried away? She wouldn't kidnap him. She loves him. Love doesn't give her the right to take him without our permission." Mike sighed heavily. "Look, I'll drive back tonight. We can sort this all out when I get there." "There's nothing to sort out, Mike. I'm pressing charges and I'm getting a restraining order. And we're changing the locks." "Sarah, be reasonable." I hung up on him. I was so tired of people telling me to be reasonable when they were the ones acting crazy. The next morning, I drove to the locksmith first, then to the police station. Tommy slept in his car seat while I filled out paperwork and gave my statement. The officer who took my report was different from the ones the night before, but she listened carefully and didn't seem to doubt my story. "Has she made any threats before this?" she asked. "Not exactly threats, but she's been very controlling since he was born, always undermining my decisions, acting like she knows better than I do about my own child. That's important context. It shows a pattern of behavior." I also filed for a restraining order that morning. The clerk at the courthouse was helpful, explaining the process and what I needed to prove. By afternoon, I had a temporary order that would keep Helen at least 500 feet away from me and Tommy. Mike got home around noon, looking exhausted and angry. He'd obviously talked to his mother, because the first thing he said was, "She says you're lying about what happened." "I'm not lying. She says she never mentioned taking Tommy anywhere. She says you got hysterical and called the police for no reason." I stared at my husband, this man I'd been with for 3 years, who'd promised to love and protect me. "Do you believe her or do you believe me?" He ran his hands through his hair. "I believe you both think you're telling the truth. But Mom's not some criminal, Sarah. She's not a kidnapper. Then why did she have a suitcase packed? Why did she try to get him a passport without telling us? Maybe she was just excited about the idea of him meeting the family. Maybe she got ahead of herself. Mike, she broke into our home at 2 a.m. She physically tried to take him from my arms. How can you possibly defend that?" But I could see it in his eyes. He was going to keep defending her no matter what. Helen was his mother, and he'd spent 32 years learning not to question her behavior, not to set boundaries, not to stand up to her when she crossed lines. That afternoon, I got a call from Helen herself. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Sarah, we need to talk. We have nothing to talk about, and you're violating the restraining order by calling me. That restraining order is ridiculous, and you know it." I'm Tommy's grandmother. I have a right to see him. You lost that right when you tried to kidnap him. I wasn't kidnapping him." Her voice was sharp now, the fake sweetness completely gone. "I was trying to save him from you. You're not fit to be a mother, Sarah. You're paranoid. You're unstable. And you're keeping my grandson from his family. His family is here, with me and Mike. Mike agrees with me. He thinks you need help." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "What?" "We've been talking. He's very concerned about your mental state. We think you should consider getting some professional help." I hung up without another word. My hands were shaking as I called Mike at work. "Did you tell your mother I need professional help?" "Sarah, I'm in a meeting. Answer me. Did you tell her that?" There was a pause. "I said I was worried about you. The stress of being a new mother, what happened last night. Maybe talking to someone would help." I felt something break inside me. My own husband thought I was the problem. Not his mother who'd broken into our home, but me. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following Friday. I spent the week documenting everything I could remember about Helen's behavior. Every unwanted visit, every undermining comment, every time she'd overstepped boundaries. I also started keeping a journal, writing down every interaction, every phone call, every time Mike defended her instead of supporting me. My sister Amy came to stay with me for a few days. She'd never liked Helen either, but she'd always been polite about it. Now, hearing everything that had happened, she was furious. "I can't believe Mike is taking her side," she said while we were feeding Tommy together. "His own wife and child. And he's worried about his mommy's feelings. He thinks I'm being dramatic, that I'm not thinking clearly because I'm a new mother. You're thinking more clearly than you ever have. You're protecting your child. That's what mothers do." Amy helped me organize all my documentation for the hearing. We made copies of everything. The police report, the restraining order application, even screenshots of the passive-aggressive texts Helen had been sending me for weeks before the incident. "Look at this pattern," Amy said, laying out the messages chronologically. "She's been building up to this for months." This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. The night before the hearing, Mike tried one more time to get me to drop the case. "Just think about what this is going to do to the family," he said. "Mom's talking about not coming to Christmas, not being part of Tommy's life at all. Is that really what you want? What I want is for your mother to respect boundaries. What I want is to feel safe in my own home. She made a mistake, Sarah. But she's not dangerous. She's just intense. She tried to take our baby to another country without our permission. How is that not dangerous? She wouldn't have actually done it. She was just trying to make a point about how stressed you've been." I stared at him, wondering when he'd become someone I didn't recognize. "Listen to yourself, Mike. You're making excuses for kidnapping." "It wasn't kidnapping." "Then what was it?" He couldn't answer that. He went to bed angry, and I stayed up all night with Tommy, rehearsing what I was going to say to the judge. The hearing was in a small courtroom in downtown Chicago. Helen showed up with a lawyer, which surprised me. I had to represent myself, but I'd prepared as well as I could. She was dressed conservatively, looking every inch the concerned grandmother. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up and told the judge exactly what had happened. I didn't embellish or exaggerate. I just laid out the facts: the unauthorized entry, the suitcase, the attempted passport application, the physical attempt to take Tommy from my arms. Helen's lawyer tried to paint me as an unstable new mother, but I'd anticipated that. I presented the documentation Amy and I had compiled, showing the pattern of boundary violations that had led up to the incident. "Your Honor," I said, "this isn't about me being an overprotective mother. This is about someone who believes she has more rights to my child than I do. Someone who was willing to break into my home and attempt to take my infant to another country without my consent." The judge listened carefully to both sides. When Helen took the stand, she tried to maintain that she'd never intended to actually take Tommy anywhere, that it had all been a misunderstanding. But then the judge asked her about the passport application. "Did you attempt to obtain a passport for this child?" Helen hesitated. "I made some inquiries about the process." "Did you fill out an application?" I may have started one. Without the parents' knowledge or consent? I thought it would be a nice surprise. The judge's expression didn't change, but I could tell she wasn't buying it. "Ms. Rossi, Attempting to obtain travel documents for a minor without parental consent is a serious matter. Combined with your presence in the home at 2 a.m. with packed luggage, this court finds the petitioner's concerns to be well-founded. She granted the restraining order for a full year. Helen was to stay at least 500 feet away from me and Tommy at all times. Any contact had to go through Mike, and only supervised visits would be allowed. Helen's face went white. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she just shook her head. Outside the courthouse, Mike tried to comfort his mother while she cried. I stood apart from them, holding Tommy, feeling both vindicated and sad. This wasn't how I'd wanted things to go. I'd never wanted to be the person who kept a grandmother away from her grandchild, but I'd also never wanted to be the person whose home was invaded in the middle of the night. Are you happy now? Mike asked me as we walked to our separate cars. No, I said honestly, but I'm safe, and so is Tommy. That's what matters. That night I called my mom in Wisconsin and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and when I was finished, she said, "I'm proud of you, sweetheart. You did the right thing. It doesn't feel right. It feels like I tore the family apart. You didn't tear anything apart. You protected your child. Helen made her choices and Mike made his. You can only control your own actions." Weeks passed. Mike and I went to marriage counseling, but he spent every session talking about how I'd destroyed his relationship with his mother. The counselor tried to help him see that his mother's behavior had been inappropriate, but he wasn't ready to hear it. Eventually, he moved out. He said he needed space to think, but I knew what he was really doing. He was choosing his mother over his wife and son. I was sad about it, but not surprised. And strangely, I wasn't as devastated as I thought I'd be. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe in my own home. I felt like I could make decisions about Tommy without someone questioning every choice I made. Helen tried to contact me a few more times, always through intermediaries, always with the same message. She just wanted to be part of Tommy's life, but she never acknowledged what she'd done wrong. She never apologized. She never showed any understanding of why her behavior had been unacceptable. So the restraining order stayed in place. And I started to build a new life for Tommy and me. One where I didn't have to constantly look over my shoulder, wondering who was going to try to undermine my authority as his mother next.